Hey, what's up, everybody?
And welcome back to Mile Higher Podcast, episode 303.
303.
I know, 303. We just saw the guys dancing on TikTok. Speaking
And
of
that's
dancing
our
on
zip
TikTok.
code, but
Yes, it is our zip code.
speaking
yeah.
of poor dancing on TikTok,
Oh, yeah. The guy from
303.
Yeah, I don't know his name. We were just all watching the clips of him. I don't know what his
They've aged a bit, if you're familiar
I
with
think
the band.
just he did.
We need to match your image, which we need to do a lot of matching. I'll get to you in a second. We need to match the image to the music.
Right.
Sean, you look old as shit. You don't look as old, but you look weird.
The rest of them still look pretty young. Whippersnappers. We have to put in a clip. He kind of looks like the late, great Philip Seymour Hoffman, I feel like.
Oh my God.
Shut up! Shut the fuck up! You have no right to take me. Shut up! Will you shut up? Shut up! Shut!
Don't you think?
I don't know if he'd take that as a compliment or not,
I don't
but
think he would. But yeah, that music's pretty trash in hindsight, must say.
yeah, it's like the most famous Colorado group.
But yes, it is our
In
zip
many
code.
years.
So happy 303 episode to us. But today, speaking of scrolling on TikTok and dancing, today we're covering the 7M TikTok cult. TikTok. Okay, so I wanted to cover this. I first told Josh about it a few weeks ago and told him there's this documentary on Netflix that's going really viral right now called Dancing for the Devil. And at first I feel like you were a little hesitant, like a TikTok dancing cult.
Yeah, I was like, I mean, after researching so many cults, I was like, no way, this has got to be a gimmick.
But it's not, guys.
But
This
I was
is-
very wrong.
It is absolutely crazy. And today we're going to be going over a lot of stuff that Netflix didn't cover, which surprisingly was a lot. I mean, all of this is way worse, especially going into the history of 7M and Robert Shin.
And his Shekinah church.
Shekinah Church. Yeah. And it is really, really off. I don't even know how to put it. I mean, it is just whack to the nth degree.
Yeah, I would say it draws a lot of comparisons to other cults out there, but
Mhm.
specifically Scientology, the big one that I think has the most parallels, as you'll see, especially when it comes to money and giving money to the church. So
But yeah, there's some, I mean, it's
even a little
violent,
bit
so
of
even trigger warning too. I mean, it's
Rael.
Yeah, a little bit like Rael. Yeah, I'd say a lot of bit like Rael.
Well, especially in the sense of somebody who claims to be close to God or, you know, the one communicating with
the chosen one.
the divine.
How many chosen ones have there been?
I know, it's crazy. Probably more than we could count, honestly.
Yeah.
So whenever you hear somebody who elevates themselves into that position of power, you do have to take a moment and really take a hard look and be like,
yeah.
why? Why are they doing this? And then you follow the breadcrumbs and you start seeing this trail of honestly horrible things that have gone on for a very long time. But we have to be very careful, right?
Yeah, we do have to be careful. We were just talking about this beforehand because Robert he seems very litigious. He likes to sue people, especially doesn't like people not talking about him. I'm surprised there's not a lawsuit against Netflix yet. I feel like maybe that's in the works.
I don't know. I don't think there is anything in there necessarily that, I mean, as you'll see, if you've watched the Netflix, today you're going to hear a lot of new stuff and far worse stuff than what you heard in the Netflix.
Yeah, they really glazed it, which is crazy for 3 hours, which I'm sure there are reasons, and we'll get into why they probably didn't include some of this. But
so yeah, this is not just like a rehashing of the Netflix documentary by any means. We're going to give you the entire backstory as far back as we could find information on Robert Shin.
We're not even going to get to the TikTok stuff until at least like halfway through.
Specifically, because I left the documentary being like, I want to know more about this Shekinah church because at the end of it, obviously I was like, there's a lot of sketchy things going on. Like, this is not how a normal church operates. So there's clearly more to the story here than what's been told. And I was like, I would love to dig into the history of Shekinah. What was its path and what were some of the things that happened prior to 7M being formed? And that's what we're really going to be focusing on for a large portion of this episode is what was life like at Shekinah before 7M started? Because 7M's kind of, Shekinah's still there, obviously, but 7M is the management company, right? That's managing these TikTok dancers.
Yep.
It's also this weird marriage between a management company and a church, which you don't see very often.
No. It's bizarre, to say the least. And yeah, you're going to hear us saying allegedly a lot in this episode. So just get used to it, folks. We just kind of have to cover our bases here because he has come after even small YouTube channels. The most well-known that he's sued was Katie Joy from Without a Crystal Ball. Yeah, he did try and sue her. So we just got to be kind of careful here. I'm a little afraid of Robert Chin.
I'm not afraid. I don't know why the Eminem song just popped in my head. I'm not afraid to take a stand, everybody. But anyways, I was going to say the information that we've compiled here, in large part thanks to Ian, who's back, by the way.
Yes. Quick shout out. Ian is back.
I'm back. I made it back again. They let me back.
Yay.
Happy to be here.
Because you did so great last week.
Thank you.
I'm sure everyone loved you. Also, Sydney is here today in place of Janelle. Janelle's on vacation this week.
Janelle's on a beach.
Yep.
Having a good time.
I honestly am sad that she's not here for this episode because I think she would find this super interesting and have a lot of good insight. But
what I was going to say before we dive into this is that the information that you're about to hear has been compiled through a deep dive of a lot of court documents. There's pending lawsuits going on right now that we, allege a lot of different things. And so we pulled as much from those documents as we possibly can. And obviously other bits of information come from ex-members of Shekinah and things like that. So, and Ian, feel free to jump in if there's anything I'm missing, but that's where a large portion of this information comes from, is from public court documents. Not like we went and found some stuff that's not already publicly out there.
No, it's all available online. But yeah, a lot of digging on your part, Ian, this week.
Yeah, a lot of court documents. Seems like no one really likes this guy. I will say,
to say the least,
doesn't have many fans. It seems. Yeah.
God no. I will say, like, the earliest of the court documents goes back to 2009. That's when these lawsuits first started being filed against him. So it's good that there's finally some sort of, like, through Netflix there is some sort of recourse against him. But it's like his crimes have been known, at least as far as the courts are concerned, since 2009. So,
yeah, but like the public, I mean, there's very little awareness, and we'll kind of talk about how that has led to him being able to continue to control people for so long. But yeah, he's truly awful. Now, this documentary, Dancing with the Devil, I think it's had some pretty split reviews. I thought it was pretty good. I had some complaints with it. Like, I felt like they had missed things, but again, I think there are reasons why they left some of it out. I think they were also nervous.
Think about it. It's Netflix, right?
Yeah.
So, and as we know from experiences, like Netflix gets the final say on everything they sign. So I'm sure there's a lot more that the production company behind this documentary has in their possession or wanted to put in it that Netflix squashed because they're like, they don't want it.
That's what I thought.
I mean, that's the last thing Netflix wants is a giant lawsuit, right?
Yeah.
Because of something on their platform, or they have to pull it or something like that. So they definitely took the families of those that were in or are still in 7M and the Shekinah Church, as well as some ex-members who've now, come out publicly talking about their experiences for the most part, but really not that much information on Robert himself. So,
yeah, I mean, you can't even find audio recordings of this dude. We wanted to put some in the episode just so you could hear his voice. So if you want to hear his voice, you're gonna have to go to the Netflix documentary because it has all been scrubbed from the
we
internet
looked
at
everywhere.
this point. I mean, he had most of it on SoundCloud, and I think that's where Netflix pulled their audio from.
Yeah, it's because he had like a full SoundCloud full of Shekinah sermons for years. I mean, it was and also like just the things they would say in the sermons are insane. But it was publicly available for a long time until the Netflix docket. Like literally, while I was researching, there was one day I listened to a clip, and then the next day I tried to go back to like put it in the script, and it was gone. So
crazy.
Yeah. This definitely put him on the high alert for sure.
Which it's so okay. Obviously, you have to talk about these types of things, but it always makes me nervous when these things come to light because I'm sure the current members are not in a great position right now because I'm sure this has really pissed him off and he's probably so on edge and unhinged at this time since this came out at the end of May.
Well, it just put millions of eyes on him.
Yeah. Yep.
And now we're furthering that.
Yep. Well, I mean, people, this has got to be stopped. It's horrific. And what's interesting is there's so much conversation around this documentary right now, and there are people that think it's overblown, and then there's people that are being really hateful towards the family members who spoke out, but also towards the people who are still in this cult, or some people are defending it, saying it's not a cult, which I think that's partly because Netflix left so much out that people don't realize how truly fucked up this whole thing is.
Because I could see how you could come out of the documentary being like, it might be kind of a stretch to call this a cult. They are, like they don't seem to be, being subjected to anything bad necessarily. Like there's obviously some of that in the documentary, but some of the current members that are still in it, some might argue that they seem happy. They've come out publicly. They're saying, no, this is not a cult. This is, I'm choosing to be here. Nobody's holding me against my will type of thing. So I can see where people are going in that direction and being like, why are we saying that this is a cult? But once you know the full complete story based on what's been alleged in these court documents, it paints a whole different picture and a much, much darker picture than I think any of us would expect. But when you start hearing it, you're like, okay, this all lines up. This all makes more sense why this is a cult.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no other way to really describe what he's got going on there other than
100% it's a cult. I feel very confident saying that. And I think once you hear everything, you're going to agree. So let's just jump in. So we'll start out by talking about Robert himself. However, there's very little to say because Robert Shin is very private about, especially his early life. We do know that he grew up in Canada, but it's unclear when or where exactly he was born. This cannot be confirmed, but he was likely raised in a religious household. I mean, it would make sense, right? And compared to other cult leaders who really mythologize their upbringing, Robert has really kept his childhood hidden for the most part. And we do know that he was likely married to his first wife when he graduated from the University of Toronto and worked as a doctor, but we don't know how long he practiced medicine or even the name of his first wife. What we do know is that around 1994, Robert, quote, saw the light of God's glory and believed that he was the one true man of God on earth. He divorced his first wife and eventually married Esther, who became, quote, the first woman of God. Then his family and his sister Catherine's family moved to Los Angeles to start Shekinah Church near Santa Fe Springs. And you might be wondering, why Los Angeles? Well, Robert hasn't specifically said why LA was calling to him to begin his religious journey, but it's really not too hard to figure out why once you know more about this guy.
Around this time, the Seven Mountains Mandate had taken over conservative spheres, and the mandate instructs religious Christians to take over the 7 mountains of mainstream society. These include family, religion, media, entertainment, business, and government, baby. It's the same mandate that televangelists use to justify collecting extreme amounts of wealth in the name of God. Supporters of the 7 Mountains Mandate include Donald Trump's spiritual advisor, Pastor Paula White.
For angels are being released right now. Angels are being dispatched right now.
We love her.
Love. Rick Perry, Mike Pompeo, Teddy Cruz, Sarah Palin, Mike Huckabee, and many other powerful Christian conservatives. The 7 Mountains Mandate is basically a doomsday cult, with the end goal of these leaders controlling the world and amassing wealth before the end of the world. While Robert Shin had publicly stated that he does not affiliate with the mandate, his actions and private sermons say otherwise. He created numerous organizations referencing 7 Mountains and discussed the importance of controlling media and gaining fame before his followers.
Now, I might be just forgetting, but I don't think they didn't get into 7 Mountains in the documentary.
No.
Because they never really explained why it was called 7M, right?
No.
Unless I missed it. Yeah.
I don't believe so.
Which I don't think we have we don't
know for sure
that it was called. Seems pretty obvious though. 7 Mountains, 7M.
7 million?
Could be. Maybe that was his gold number. No, this dude wanted way more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
It would make sense for it to be 7 mountains.
I think that's what it was, yeah.
So for Robert, his mountains would be media, entertainment, and business. He wanted to make moolah, and a lot of it. For him, LA was the perfect place to do that. Love Los Angeles. One of my favorite places.
Are you being sarcastic?
Absolutely. Can't stand LA.
We hate LA.
Just there's a different aura there. I don't know.
No hate to.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Some cool people.
Yeah, lots of cool people.
But there's a lot of
Josh and I always describe there's a lot of people in LA that are kind of, is this mean to say? Soulless is how we've described them. It's just
a lot of people selling their soul to the devil.
They're lost in the sauce. That's the only way I can put it. Like they've like lost the
chasing fame.
Yeah. It's like yeah. A lot of them, but not all of them.
No, there's plenty of beautiful people there.
No hate to
living
our
their
LA
best
audience.
life. No.
It's so fun every once in a while. I drag Josh when we have to go out there for work sometimes. Luckily, you don't have to go this year yet.
But in 1994, Robert founded Shekinah Church. And Shekinah, because they didn't say what Shekinah was either, it's a Hebrew word meaning viable manifestation of the presence of God. Pretty strong word to use.
Shekinah.
And
it's kind of fun to say.
It's great to say Shekinah. I will say, if you try to look up the church, there are a lot of churches, a lot of French churches specifically. I don't know why, but there's a lot of churches that use the name.
Really?
Yes. So like even just but now when we were trying to find sound, there's a lot of churches you can find that are called like, we're the Shekinah Church. Those are real churches. You know,
right.
Not to be confused with Robert's.
He doesn't have the only Shekinah church in the world.
Good clarification.
Right.
Interesting. A lot of French churches, huh?
Yeah, I don't know what that's about.
Does anyone else out there have dressing room trauma? Well, if you do, you're not alone. I hate going to the mall. I hate dressing rooms. I have so many memories of being in the dressing room, just totally lost, having a mentee be, and so I avoid it at all costs. And I'm able to do that because I use Stitch Fix. Stitch Fix sends style so good that you can feel it. They deliver all the confidence that comes with a truly amazing outfit without any of the work, which I love. With Stitch Fix, you get a stylist who understands your style, your size, and your budget, and they do all the shopping for you. It's the easiest way to transform your wardrobe this season. And what I love about Stitch Fix is the longer you use it, the more your stylist gets to know you. They're going to really be able to pick out pieces that you're going to like, and you're sending back less and less because they just get you. And it's really so true that the right outfit gives you a total confidence boost. I mean, when I look good, I feel good, and it shows. And I love how easy it is to get that outfit with Stitch Fix. I just give my stylist my size, my style, my budget preference, and I order a box when I want and how I want. For me, I like to get mine every 3 weeks, but it's completely customizable and there's no subscription required. She sends me 5 just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and pro styling tips, which really come in handy. Then I keep what I love and I send back the rest. And it's so easy. They literally just send you a prepaid mailer bag. You throw everything you don't want in there, put it in your mailbox, and you're good to go. And shipping, returns, and exchanges are always free. So I truly love Stitch Fix. I highly recommend it. I've gotten several of my friends and family started with Stitch Fix as well, and they love it just as much as I do. Style that makes you feel as good as you look. And now is the best time to get started with Stitch Fix, guys. They're offering an amazing deal. You can get started at stitchfix.com/milehigher and get $100 off. That's $25 off your first 4 fixes for a limited time only. That's stitchfix.com/milehigher for $100 off. stitchfix.com/milehigher. Must redeem within 7 days of sign up. Offer does not include kids fixes. So for the first several years, Shekinah stayed pretty small. It was comprised of the 15 original members, Robert's family, Catherine's family, and a few other recruited members as well. This included Daniel Joseph, who would eventually become Robert's informally adopted son. And all of these original members would eventually become high-ranking officials within the church, all wielding power and serving as intermediaries to Robert. But still, in the beginning, things were humble, you could say. Shekinah served as a religious center for Korean immigrants, actually, and they could speak to others in their native language, eat Korean food, and be treated like family. So it was a really comforting place for a lot of people in the beginning. And this attracted specifically Melanie and Priscilla Lee, and they joined the church in 1999 as teenagers. Melanie, Priscilla, and their third unnamed sister, who we'll get into in a second here, had recently moved to California from South Korea with their mother. However, their mother worked nights to support their family, but was also an alcoholic and abandoned the girls for weeks at a time. Priscilla, who was the oldest, basically raised her 2 sisters. And it's important to note that Melanie and Priscilla did not mention their third sister in the documentary, so you probably hadn't heard about her. And she is the only one that's mentioned in the various lawsuits against Robert Shin. And we're not sure why she was left out of the documentary. I'm sure there's a reason. It could be that she's still in the cult. We have no idea. Still, the Lee sisters initially felt like they had finally found a family in a way. They could speak to Robert freely for guidance, and many members were around their age and from similar backgrounds, and they had people around them who they thought truly cared for them.
Let's talk about Robert's sermons, especially early on. Well, they were pretty frightening. He stressed the importance of, quote, dying to yourself, which meant relinquishing yourself of all material things and cutting off familial ties to devote yourself to Shekinah and Robert. You die to your friends and family for things to come back and resurrect. According to Robert, this is how you can deliver your family to salvation.
It was quite interesting to hear ex-members of 7M in the documentary trying to explain this and clearly realizing how absurd it sounds now that they're out of it, but like trying to explain why they believed in it and their thought process at the time. To have to die to your family in order to save them, that it's like
pretty extreme.
Yeah, very, very.
Yeah, I've been in a lot of churches in my life, and I must say I've never heard a pastor tell me to die to myself and cut ties with my family.
Yeah, die to your family too, in order to save them.
I can understand the material things to some extent, but still, like any logical person be like, well, I need material things to survive in the world. What do you mean I need to cut, like just get rid of all of it? Then what? How do I support myself?
Yeah, there was one guy specifically in the documentary who was talking about how, he was told he has to die to his own son in order to save him. And he was like, how do I do this? And Robert never had an answer for him. And luckily he didn't, and he's out of it now. But yeah, just a crazy mindset to imagine being in.
He would also explain that in hell, you are tortured endlessly by the sins you committed on earth and the pain you inflicted on others. He explained that you and your family are cursed to hell, and that is why you can't have any connection to them. But you're in luck, because as Robert is the man of God, you could save yourself and your family by devoting yourself to him and, of course, Shekinah. Soon, the Lee sisters only spoke to members of the church. Melanie had one friend, a young man named Mark from high school, who visited Shekinah. He said it felt less like an invitation to services and more like a recruitment. He said, quote, I'm not joining the church, but good for y'all. That's pretty telling, that statement right there. Felt more like a recruitment than just an invitation to come to church.
Yeah, that's when you know it's like crossed the line to cult.
As the church's members grew and more people devoted themselves to Robert by giving him all of their material possessions and money, Shekinah finally had the wealth to accomplish Robert's true goals. Right after the Lee sisters joined Shekinah, the church expanded. It moved from its original location to one in Norwalk, California, where it still operates.
And Robert then started on his first mountain, which was his biggest passion, probably still is, entertainment. He began his own public access TV show called The Millionaires Club, which was later renamed The Billionaires Club, which stressed the importance of financial success as one of Christianity's true aims. I wonder how many of you Christians out there would agree with that. Seems pretty backwards to me.
Yeah.
Success, financial success. I don't know. Jesus seemed like a pretty humble guy. Money didn't matter much to him, but
nope.
I guess what do I know? And by the end, Shekinah would create real estate companies, at least 3 media production companies, and smaller businesses like flower shops and coffee shops. And Shekinah members staffed all of these enterprises. And unless you were higher up, you did not control how much or when you were paid. And this is also when Shekinah introduced their hierarchy. Of course, at the top was Robert, the man of God himself. But at this point, most members believed every word this guy said and would do anything to please him and save themselves from eternal damnation. Directly beneath him was his wife, the woman of God, and she controlled the members' personal lives and took a specific interest in the women. Underneath her were the mentors and the sub-mentors who were assigned to particular members, and they acted as intermediaries between the member and Robert, because you could no longer just go up to Robert yourself, how it used to be in the early days. You had to have a mentor go speak to Robert for you. Robert also wanted to make sure that no secrets were kept, because, I mean, that's the cult recipe, right? No secrets from the top. Secrets from the members. Though.
And separation from the members to the leader.
Exactly.
I don't know any regular church that does that where you can't go speak to the pastor.
Oh, you don't think so? I'm sure there's some churches, right?
I think most normal churches you can make an appointment with the pastor.
So you wouldn't consider Joel Osteen's church a normal church? Like, you can't go talk to Joel, right?
Yeah, you can.
Really?
Sure you can. You think Joel Osteen doesn't want to meet with his members?
Of course not. You think he does?
Absolutely.
So
it's probably,
like, hey,
I mean, I'm sure there's some hoops you got to jump through to do it. But yeah, these televangelists probably do make themselves available at some point. That'd be really bad. That'd be like out there if like no one's ever spoken. No member of the church has ever spoken to Joel Osteen.
Well, maybe some members, but I feel like it's not just.
No, it's not just like willy nilly.
Thousands of people.
Right. It's not. But you could make an appointment, and I'm sure there's like a process that rather than no, you can never speak to him. Again, I don't know. Maybe that's what happens at Joel Osteen's church. I don't know.
So I made up a fake quote from Joel Osteen saying, "I do not make $54 million a year. That is flat out untrue. I make $55 million a year." And I emailed it to Joel Osteen's team while pretending to be a reporter.
But you're saying most churches you can.
I'm just saying like your average, like a church similar size to Shekinah, just your local community church is not going to be like, sorry, you can't speak to Pastor Joe because you got to speak to his mentor or, your mentor or his wife only or something. Like, that's just very weird. Like, the whole point of the church is like you have the shepherd, you have the flock. The shepherd needs to tend to his flock, not separate himself from the flock.
Gotcha. Okay.
There's an analogy for you.
Well, Robert did not want people to just come up and talk to him. And he also explained that thoughts were either the product of God or the devil. Anything that pops in your head, it's either coming from God or the devil, and you need to report any thought that you have to your mentor. And you would immediately tell a mentor if someone else had told you something incriminating. That member would either be rewarded or publicly shamed by Robert during a sermon. That member would then devote themselves even more through financial contributions or labor to avoid eternal damnation.
This is just so fucked up and evil.
I know.
To prey upon people's spiritual beliefs and something so near and dear to you that's so special and sacred, and to exploit that for financial gain. I can't think of too many things more evil than that.
I mean, people are so vulnerable when it comes to those things. And I can't imagine the psychological damage of thinking that every thought you have is coming from another source. And it's either coming from good or evil. Like I would just be fucked up over that. I've never thought for a moment my thoughts came from anyone else but me.
Yeah.
Just that mindset was really hard for me. I was really thinking about that a lot during, watching this documentary and preparing for this episode, how like,
I mean, that's not completely
torturous.
Out of the ordinary though for
Really?
somebody religious to think that way, I would say. I mean,
Really?
I know I did personally for a long time.
Really?
Thought anything that didn't align with my, what my values were or what the Bible says, that was an evil thought.
That was implanted by someone
Yeah,
else.
and that was implanted by the devil or demons or whatever, whatever
Oof,
evil
that is heavy.
evil thing was fucking with me. But yeah, it is heavy because then you go to bed every night and you feel so much shame and guilt. And that's why I would pray every single night to ask God for forgiveness of my sins and these thoughts that I had. And oftentimes when I look back and think about some of the things, they were just totally normal human thoughts and feelings, right?
Yeah.
But because I was being taught that this is evil, and if you dwell on these thoughts and you continue down that road, it's going to lead to worse and worse things. So it's like you have to cut it and kill it immediately, ask for forgiveness in order to feel okay about yourself. Yeah, it is torturous.
It's
and
terrible.
It messes you up for a long, long time.
I'm sure.
But I mean, everybody's got a different perspective on that. Again, I'm just sharing my opinion, but everybody has a different experience. So just want to put that out there.
I also think that in Robert's case specifically, that speaks to like one of his go-to tactics with a lot of this recruitment is that he'll take something that is relatively normal in other religious circles. So say you were in a church before and they taught you there, like, okay, your thoughts are either good or evil, the devil or God. You hear that and you're like, oh, that's what my old pastor said. And I just haven't been to church before. But then he takes it a step further and is like, but you have to tell me that exact thought no matter what it is.
Yeah.
And so I think like and at that point, you're already kind of indoctrinated, not only through him, but also whatever past churches you were a part of. So then you're like, oh yeah, I'll tell you whatever it is. And for the most part, it probably was benign, but he's hopeful that like you're going to say something that can be used as blackmail later on or anything. Just like
what can I get? The dirt.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's important.
Make you feel horrible.
That's a great point because it shows that he's not really creating anything new here at all. He's just preying upon people's beliefs that they already have. And like Ian said, taking it to the next level by then using it against you, by making you tell him those. Like I would never go tell my pastor about this thought that I had. Like maybe there would be times where like Sunday morning we would all get together with like small groups, all guys, our youth pastor, and he would be like, does anybody want to, anybody struggling with anything?
Got any evil thoughts?
Yeah. And like, or you know what I mean? In that way, but it would never be like, Josh, you must tell me what evil thoughts you're thinking. I know
that you're having them tell me them now.
Right. It would never work. It would be completely consensual versus this is putting somebody in a forced position where you are going to be punished if you do not divulge this information.
So it's easier for him to prey upon people who already sort of have a foundation laid for some of these beliefs.
Absolutely. Because it's registering and like Ian said, it's it feels familiar enough that you're willing to ease into it, and then you get sucked in completely. And then he has that control over you once you tell him something that he could potentially use against you at that point. And it just puts him in a position of power. It just gives him more and more power. Because even in Catholic confessional, like you're doing it in a way, a private way it's not like the priest is then going out and telling the rest of the group, hey, so-and-so confess this to me. You know what I mean? That would be completely fucked up. And there's a reason why that doesn't happen. It's a very personal thing. And the priest is there to just help you deal with it and, repent so that you can gain forgiveness and move on and feel better when leaving. Versus I think when you go to Robert, you feel maybe better in the moment, but then down the road, it hits you like a sack of bricks. You're like, oh my God, I told Robert about this and now he knows.
And he might then publicly shame you in front of the rest of the church and then convince you that in order to make up for what you've done, you've got to, do more labor, give us more money,
right? Or use it to manipulate you.
Yeah.
And prey upon your weaknesses. So not only did Robert control his members' thoughts, but he also managed every aspect of their lives. When the church bought numerous properties, members were forced to move into them with other members. Melanie and Priscilla were separated into two separate homes. Melanie lived with a group called the, quote, Glory Girls, which, I don't know, just something about that name.
Agreed.
And especially since
gonna say that.
This was a group of girls between the ages of 13 and 16 who were all living in this house under the direct supervision of Catherine, Robert's sister. It just seems very, very sus to me. But members were still expected to pay rent, even though they moved you there. And they had to move all of their money into bank accounts controlled by a mentor. That member would work for a Shekinah-controlled business. They deposit the money into a Shekinah-controlled bank account, have the money moved by a mentor to cover rent, and then pay Robert directly. The rest would be left for the members themselves. While Melanie Lee was still in high school, she worked 40 hours a week at Shekinah-run businesses. After Catherine Shin finished moving her money around, she was often left with less than $100, not a day, not a week, a month.
A month.
Could you imagine working 40 hours a week? And at the end of that month, you have $100 in your account because you were giving all of your money.
And it gets worse.
To your spiritual leader. For adults with higher paying jobs, that number would often be even less. And this highly controlled environment allowed power over every element of a member's life. Melanie Lee was not allowed to attend college after graduation, could never see a doctor, and could not maintain relationships with anyone outside the church. So isolation.
Which is also an interesting thing to note that Robert didn't want people to go see doctors, considering he was a doctor at one point.
And he's probably like, because I'm a doctor, I'll just be your doctor. And that's very, very creepy because as we'll see later on.
Which we don't know that he did that.
Right.
I don't even think there's any alleged anything that he was trying to be a doctor to them. Was there?
No, I mean, not really. At least in the sermons through the Netflix doc and the legal documents, it was never this conversation of like, oh, you feeling sick? Come to me.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be surprised if there was that element to it of like, I was a doctor in my secular life, and now I'm the man of God, so I must be the best doctor in the damn world. You know, I wouldn't. But I do think, to speak to Josh's point, with I think mainly that medical, just like stay away from anything medical, partly is due to control, but is also kind of due to covering up his alleged crimes.
Yeah, totally.
Yes, which will make more sense as we continue to get into some of that stuff, which is, forewarning. Pretty
well, and also
awful.
He believes that he can cure everything with a prayer.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Right. There's that element.
Which is crazy to think about, because I can't imagine that all these members never got sick, right? Never got the flu, never got some type of illness, and to not be able to go see a doctor and get prescription medication to help you with those. That's pretty wild to think about.
There's a lot of different religions out there who are anti-medical care at all. What is the one specifically? I want to say like Church. Sydney would know, Church of Science. Yeah, I know you and I have talked about that before.
Christian Science, I know.
Christian Science. Okay, yeah. Yep. They just, no doctors. Break a leg, don't go to the ER, deal with everything on your own. God will heal it kind of mentality, which is pretty wild to think about. But meanwhile, mentors and influential members of the church would act without fear of repercussion, of course, including sexual assault against those beneath them in the church hierarchy. So I want to give a trigger warning here. We are going to be getting into the sexual assaults that allegedly occurred within Shekinah. So around 2001 to 2002, when Melanie Lee was between 15 and 16 years old, she was allegedly sexually assaulted by her Sunday school teacher, Peace Montgomery. Peace was 9 years older than Melanie and responsible for picking her up and dropping her off at school. And since he held power in the church, high power, Melanie saw him daily, and she felt there was no one she could turn to. And when Robert found out that Peace allegedly committed statutory rape against Melanie, he was allowed to keep his position within the church, of course. And instead, Robert and the church punished Melanie by telling her that she had been cursed by this sin and that she needed to devote herself even more to the church if she wanted to avoid hell for herself and for her sisters. This, of course, would not be the last time a high-ranking member allegedly used their power to justify sexual assault, and it would only get worse. And as we'll see throughout the next decade, Robert's attempts to break into Hollywood and be famous would really all be failures. The Millionaires Club was seen as a key public access piece of crap that was only watched by members of the church during sermons. He wrote books spouting his philosophy, but still, these were only purchased by Shekinah members who were actually forced to buy them. So it doesn't say a whole lot, right?
Yeah, and by 2008, Robert had allegedly extracted millions of dollars from his members. He had formed his first media company years earlier called Seventh Millennium. So that's what that M could mean.
Yeah,
Millennium.
I guess it could mean that, yeah. I'm sure it's like for him.
But he dissolved this business in 2008. So maybe it was like a remake of that.
Yeah, could be.
So he dissolved that in 2008 to make way for Imaginating Pictures, which was Robert's first real attempt to break into Hollywood. And guess what? Nobody watched his movies. It would take a year for their first film, a short titled Angry Asian Man, to be released. The other forgotten movies included 2018's Abducted, which is just a Taken ripoff that starred Daniel Joseph, an original Shekinah member, and the pseudo-adopted son of Robert himself. This one would be the only time that Robert tried to catapult his children into fame. He tried to get his daughter Chloe a record deal and his son Isaiah into bigger movies. Both of these attempts failed, but Isaiah expressed interest in filming music videos, and his dad gave him his first videography production company in 2018. Robert always seemed to have his eyes on music videos, specifically dance. In 2007, while social media was still in its infancy, Robert began talking to krump dancers he found on Facebook. He thought krump dancers specifically were easy to recruit, as one of their goals was to spread God's word through dance.
I actually never knew that.
Really?
No, I've always loved watching krump dancing. It's really, really cool to watch, but I never knew there was any connection to religion.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
It is.
I remember seeing a few services over the years where there would be like interpretive dance.
Yeah,
to
which makes sense.
Different types of stories and stuff. Some of it's quite beautiful.
Yeah. People felt very mixed about the dancing in the documentary. I know, Ian, you thought the interpretive dance moments were a little much.
Yeah, not to, beautiful stuff, guys. Beautiful work.
Yeah.
Really, it was great stuff. I
a lot of it.
It was a lot. It was a lot of it. It was a lot of it. Maybe I'm not on TikTok, so I don't really see a lot of dance often. So when I do, I'm like, oh, that's nice in small doses.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, it was kind of in weird parts too.
It was. I can see your point. I really loved it because I love watching dance, and
well, that's probably why they put it in there. Is because it
makes it
visually
way more entertaining
pleasing to watch. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of krump dancers that had moved to LA to pursue their dreams and hadn't found a dedicated church, and Robert realized that he could provide that for them. This would be his primary recruitment tactic years later for 7M, but still these early attempts at entertainment didn't amount to much at all. The most successful film was 2013's Random Encounters, which was basically a forgettable Hallmark movie where a struggling actor has a meet cute with a screenwriter at a coffee shop. Which, God, it's Hallmark in a nutshell right there. Which, love Hallmark movies, by the way. Definitely, I've watched a few. We would watch a bunch with Kendall's grandmother. It was like one of her favorite things to watch.
Oh my gosh, I know.
Hallmark. She'd just be like, put on Hallmark.
Oh, all day.
It's like Hallmark or the news.
Yeah, especially towards the end of her life. No, even the news was out by the end. I mean, it's just Hallmark. And you actually kind of liked the movies, huh?
I enjoyed watching them with her, even though it was
watching them with
the
her.
most predictable scripts of all time. But
yeah,
still, a lot of them are very cute.
Actually, I just want a regular coffee. Those white girl pumpkin spice lattes annoy me.
I'm in love. Name?
Senorita Awesome.
The only notable thing about that film was the fact that it starred Meghan Markle before she got her big break in Suits later that year. When she married into the royal family in 2018, Robert decided to re-release the film in England. I'm sure he was hoping like, starting to get some notoriety here. I'll get my film out there. Well, guess what? Nobody gave a shit.
Yeah.
Or watched it.
Yeah,
so
very few people actually went out and saw that. And we've heard too that he is like allegedly kind of taken credit for bringing the two of them together, Harry and Meghan.
Yeah, he allegedly, our
favorite word today.
Yeah, it's our favorite word. In a sermon that, of course, you can't find anymore, he allegedly stated that because of her role in 2013's Random Encounters, Suits wanted to put her on, even though they were released in the same year, and Suits had like filmed 6 months earlier, and like, but he's like, I'm the reason Meghan Markle's famous. That's me.
I gave her royal life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anyway, even though Robert was clearly desperate for fame, he didn't really need it because by exploiting his members, he could still afford luxury vehicles, mansions, and fancy dinners for those closest to him. He is definitely a big spender and likes to show off his money. However, if there was ever a potluck in the church, underpaid members were expected to use their own tiny allowances to pay for their food, drinks, and other materials. And at this point, Robert also made several deals with other shady evangelists, all of them who seemed to represent the Seven Mountains Mandate. The old Shekinah website lists multiple pastors and church organizations, including Bill Winston. Now, Bill Winston was a megachurch pastor out in Chicago who defrauded hundreds of members by opening his own bank. Always a fun idea. In 2008, and his bank was shut down in 2013 after it hemorrhaged millions of dollars with no way to pay back the account owners. Sid Roth is another megachurch pastor who taught how the supernatural relates to Christianity. He was also accused of defrauding members and even claimed to be the second coming of Jesus Christ.
Oh,
so many second comings. Also, televangelist Jesse Duplantis, who we've talked about before.
We have.
Yes, we have.
You know, I've owned 3 different jets in my life, and used them and just burning them up for the Lord Jesus.
Was also supported by Robert Shin, even after he collected donations that only enriched himself when Hurricane Ida hit his parish in 2021. And when community members criticized him, he claimed that he bought hundreds of power generators for people that they could just pick up for free. But when the hurricane victims actually arrived at his church asking for the generators, he told them that they were all gone, which in reality, we all know they probably just never existed at all. And the Trinity Broadcasting Network, the world's largest Christian TV channel, was accused of widespread embezzlement and covering up of sexual assault allegations after employees weren't paid and the owners bought, what else? private jets, baby. And Robert's Millionaires Club would sometimes air on Trinity, of course. But still, at this point, Robert was very much in the shadow of these other evangelists, which, while he always wanted more fame, this obscurity and secrecy would sort of allow him to commit even more crimes against his members, as we alluded to earlier.
These days are some crazy times, let me tell you. And the number one thing I think all of us want at the end of the day is safety, security, peace of mind, knowing that if something were to happen at our home, that help would be on the way as soon as possible. Well, that's why I'm here to tell you about Simply Safe Home Security. We absolutely love Simply Safe Home Security. I recommend it to absolutely everybody. And the reason I recommend it is because not only is it affordable compared to a lot of the other competitors out there, they don't lock you into any crazy contracts, and their system is so easy to set up. You can literally do it yourself. And best of all, you can truly customize their system to fit a home of any size, which I love. Simply Safe is advanced home security that literally puts you first. I mean, there's so many reasons why you'd want it, obviously for that safety security in case somebody breaks in, but also it's great to just give you that peace of mind when you go on vacation. You want to check the cameras at your house. Maybe you have somebody staying with your pets, or you just want to see what your pets are up to outside. Simply Safe Home Security has inside cameras, outside cameras that are all crystal clear, HD quality. I've had no issues with the connectivity. The app is absolutely amazing. Setting it, arming and disarming the alarm is a breeze. It is really the most user-friendly system out there. And I've tried probably all of the different security systems over the years on the market. And I gotta say, I absolutely love Simply Safe because it truly is simple to use. Simply Safe offers advanced home security and 24/7 monitoring that is accessible to all, with low upfront costs and monitoring plans for less than $1 a day. You really can't beat that price. With 24/7 LiveGuard protection, Simply Safe agents can act on an alarm within 5 seconds of receiving the alarm signal, deterring intruders and dispatching police, because in a crisis, every moment counts. So by partnering with Simply Safe, we've definitely gotten real peace of mind, and I want you to have it too. Get an exclusive 20% off any new Simply Safe system when you sign up for Fast Protect monitoring. Just visit simplysafe.com/milehigher. That's simplysafe.com/milehigher, because there's no safe like Simply Safe. So let's go back to Priscilla. When she first became involved with Shekinah, she and Melanie were both living in the US illegally. Melanie got a driver's license a few years after she joined Shekinah, but Robert took it from her. He told her that the only reason she was able to get one as an undocumented person was because, quote, he prayed for it and she had to be forever in his debt. As Priscilla was 19 at the time of her recruitment and had already graduated from high school, Robert had her work 2 professional jobs. She worked for a company outside Shekinah Monday through Friday, and the Shekinah-operated Giga Financial on Saturdays. Sunday, her only day off, started at 6 a.m. with all the other girls so she could attend church services. So that is a brutal schedule, man. Priscilla eventually lost her job with the outside company after they learned that she was also working for Giga Financial. Her contract explicitly stated that she could not have a second job. Shekinah members blamed Priscilla for not keeping her Giga job a secret, and Robert allegedly punished her by giving all of her wages to high-ranking members. When she did get the money again, she was allowed to have no more than $40 a week. Priscilla was allegedly instructed to pre-sign dozens of blank checks so that a mentor or Robert could pay themselves or the mentors once Priscilla received a deposit. Priscilla and the other members had to account for and report every transaction they made, including a piece of candy. They also had to converse with their mentor before purchasing anything. And if the mentor said no, the purchase wasn't allowed. But at this point, years into her indoctrination, Priscilla felt that not only was Robert the only way to salvation, but Shekinah was the only way she could survive and support her family here in the US. There were some accidental miracles too. Melanie struggled with a rash for months on end, and nobody could do anything to get rid of it. Then, allegedly, Robert baptized her in Laguna Beach, and the rash cleared up within a day. For them, this was proof that Robert was the true man of God, and for Robert, perhaps he just got lucky.
But still, the alleged abuse continued. When Priscilla began working full-time at Giga, Catherine berated her daily. The abuse got so intense that one day she even threatened to marry her off. And she was fearful that she was actually going to be forced into an arranged marriage, so she actually left the church in 2004 And for some reason, she did not mention this in the documentary. I'm not sure why, but she could not speak with her other two sisters during her time away unless the church approved of that. When they did allow a phone call, they yelled at Priscilla and told her that she had condemned them to hell and would curse them too if she remained outside of Shekinah. Priscilla did eventually marry an unnamed man in 2008, and meanwhile, Melanie stayed at Shekinah. And as we mentioned earlier, Robert did not allow her to go to college, and her days were spent working 2 full-time Shekinah-operated jobs and waking up at 6 a.m. on her days off for church services. And the services also got way more intense. Not only did Robert berate members and condemn them constantly, allegedly, but he began further stressing the importance of members garnering fame and told members that real followers would give 100% of their income to the church. 100%. There were even reports of waterboarding in the middle of these services and other forms. Allegedly. Yeah, and other forms of public humiliation and torture. Yeah, Ian, where did you want to elaborate on that a little bit? The waterboarding, because that's pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah, it is crazy. So this when in the beginning of the episode, when I was talking about like going on SoundCloud, the Shekinah SoundCloud page, and they had sermons there. One of them that was deleted a day later before I could put in the script was his current wife, Hannah, giving a sermon. And she's talking to one member in particular. And she was basically talking about like how, you have to struggle to like remain in God's graces. And she basically said, like, you remember the other day to one member when you were waterboarded in the middle of services, and then she starts maniacally laughing.
Amen. I remember Dom standing kneeling there and getting waterboarded. Hallelujah. Praise the Lord for people servants of the Lord who obey the prophetic leading and decide to just pour water all over somebody. Amen.
Just like this really deep, which I know a lot of televangelists and other evangelists do. Like they kind of burst into this insane laughter.
Kenneth Copeland, baby.
Kenneth definitely does that. Yeah.
So it was definitely a tactic. But yeah, that was the specific SoundCloud clip where it was on their SoundCloud page one day. I listened to it. I was like, holy shit. And then it was gone the next day.
It only gets worse from here, folks, but Robert allegedly forced Melanie to divulge her deepest secrets to him and threatened that without complete submission, she and her family would be condemned to hell. And this is why she kept reinforcing that belief to Priscilla. She feared for both of their lives if she didn't return to the cult. In 2008, Robert announced that he was separating from his wife Esther and told the congregation that the position of the woman of God was open to any woman member he thought would be fit to marry him. He had already chosen a new wife, though, a young woman named Shirley Kim, but he kept this hidden from the rest of the church. In November of 2008, allegedly half a dozen young female members of Shekinah burst into a Sunday service, which I believe this was mentioned in the documentary. They accused Robert of allegedly sexually assaulting them, lying to them about potentially becoming the woman of God, and approximately half of the congregation left with them. But to those that remained, Robert admitted that he was a sex addict and that he too was fighting his demons to enter into the grace of God. When the members heard this admission, they felt that Robert had been humanized and became even more fervent in their belief in him. Melanie convinced Priscilla to rejoin the cult based on this belief. Melanie convinced Priscilla to meet with Robert, and it was during this meeting that Robert presented himself as her savior. He said that he had no idea what Catherine had put her through and promised that she would never be abused again if she rejoined the church. Priscilla was behind on her bills, and Robert pledged financial stability if she left her husband, gave away her dogs, and rejoined the cult, allegedly.
Now, Priscilla ran 2 real estate companies for Robert, and by the time she left for good, she would have made millions of dollars in commissions, but she barely saw a cent of that money and was continually just paid that $40 a week, the same amount that she had been paid before she left the first time. And if she was paid, then the money was placed in an account that was controlled by the woman of God, who would just as quickly withdraw the funds to ensure that Priscilla was essentially always broke. Robert and other high-ranking officials told Priscilla that she would suffer significant consequences if she did not give all of her income to the church. And anytime she brought this up, she was punished and forced to do manual labor around the church. And in addition to running these 2 real estate companies, Priscilla was also expected to cook for the church and provide cold-pressed juices for Robert's wife every day. and she would have to pay for these groceries out of her own pocket. So insane. Priscilla was also forced to give all of her belongings, designer bags, clothing, jewelry, and even her car to the church. And Robert would even just randomly show up at her house sometimes and take all of her material things because his wife wanted them. Now, around this time, former church member Lydia Chung sued Robert and the Shekinah Church for the first time. Lydia, who was a member of the church from 1996 until 2008, alleged that Robert made her give the church all of her material possessions and her savings as well, which amounted to nearly $4 million. Unfortunately, the case was dismissed, and Lydia was ordered to pay Robert's legal fees, which he did waive, whatever. But basically, he just claimed that she was an angry ex-member who was actually in love with Robert. Lydia said, quote, "I never wanted Robert. I knew who he was. He was broke, ugly, and married."
I do want to say quickly the reason they bring this up in the documentary, but like it's incredibly hard to sue a cult because many members, like obviously with Rael, it was a different situation because the crimes they were committing were against children. But even then, like he was able to just hop a bunch of different countries. When we're dealing with adults, the way the courts see it is like these are all consenting adults. And so it's very hard to prove when a crime has been committed, even though these are, in my eyes, clearly alleged crimes that are just accomplished through manipulation. And Josh, you brought this up earlier, like the fact that they're a church makes it a lot easier to hide the alleged financial crimes. But even the, alleged sexual crimes as well, again, in my eyes, and I'm sure in your guys' eyes, like this is rape.
Yes.
Like the way the courts see it is like it's not forceful because it is through manipulation. It still is in a way consensual, which is just like a very backwards way of viewing this whole fucking thing.
They see it as this like gray area, that, I mean, we do live in a free country. These are adults making their own decision. I mean, this is what a larger conversation just to how hard it is to get members out of these cults as well, and why so many people have come to the defense of these members saying it's their choice to be in it. And it is. It's a very complicated issue because it's not like, as far as we know, they're not being held behind locked doors. They could leave. They are consenting to be there. And, it's truly fucked up. It's a very broken part of our system that there's no way to hold these cult leaders accountable.
Well, and even I was going to say just prosecuting sexual assault crimes in general are difficult. I mean, oftentimes victims don't come out till years later, and then you got to deal with, statute of limitations and, oftentimes investigators be like, well, was a rape kit obtained? And, like there's all these steps that have to be done before they can actually prosecute this oftentimes. So that makes it even more difficult because even though it may have seemed like they were consensual in that moment, if you remove the manipulation part of it, if they didn't go and then in that moment believe they were raped and maybe later on they came to that conclusion, then the courts just see it differently. I don't know. The whole thing needs to be relooked at, I feel like.
I feel like the manipulation factor has to be considered.
Sometimes it feels a little helpless. Like, what can you do?
Yep.
In 2009, before Robert officially divorced Esther, he allegedly began sexually assaulting Priscilla routinely. He allegedly came to her home unannounced and asked her to massage his thighs. He did this often for 1 year, and every time he allegedly instructed Priscilla to get closer to his crotch. Even when he officially married Shirley, this behavior allegedly did not stop. After Robert allegedly forced Priscilla to massage him regularly, he showed up at the Giga offices unannounced. He allegedly called Priscilla alone into the conference room and instructed her to undress. He had been monitoring the weight of all of the female members and wanted to see if she had gained any weight. After this, he allegedly forced her to have sex with him, and this allegedly continued for over a year. She had to coordinate times for him to meet her when his wife was not around, whether at her Shekinah-owned home or the Shekinah businesses she was employed with. She felt like she couldn't refuse. Robert allegedly controlled her housing, her employment, and her literal salvation. She feared that if she stopped having sex with him, she'd be damned to hell. Unknown to Priscilla, Robert allegedly had tried to pull the same shit with Melanie. Allegedly, he had been forcing Melanie to give him massages too and use the same tactic of having her massage closer and closer to his crotch each time. Robert allegedly told Melanie that King David was allowed to have mistresses and he wanted her to be one of his mistresses. This disgusted Melanie and she was fearful that she was going to be assaulted.
So after one of their massage sessions, Robert allegedly tells Melanie that she is going to have to commit herself to the church by having sex with a member of the church of his choice. When Melanie asked for a week to think about it, Robert allegedly gave her 3 days. So Melanie decides to call her friend Mark, who we mentioned earlier in this episode, to pick her up from her Shekinah-owned home. And while packing up her things, a member parked their car behind Mark's and blocked them in. Mark ended up threatening the member with a baseball bat, and luckily they were able to leave because this person pulled away. But they drove to Priscilla's house and tried to get her to accompany them, but she refused. She was so frightened that she would lose her livelihood and both would be cursed, to eternal damnation. So Priscilla remained in the church. Of course, Robert ended up blaming Priscilla for Melanie leaving and said that she would have to do extra work to save them both. And this just meant allegedly having more sex with him. Priscilla said she felt sick every time she saw Robert, and he explained that her body was being purified, so she would have to spend more time with him doing you know what. And Priscilla believed that every member of the Shekinah church, including Robert's wife and children, knew exactly what he was doing to her and other female members of the church. In 2012, Priscilla did leave the church once more, and Robert and his new wife, Shirley, ensured that she had nothing in her bank account, and she had panic attacks and PTSD flashbacks regularly. Since this period is unmentioned in the documentary, it's unknown if Melanie and Priscilla reconnected.
While away, Priscilla created 2 successful real estate companies and garnered many clients. Unfortunately, Robert and Shekinah still haunted her. She felt as though she couldn't talk to anyone else except for Robert about her problems, and if she did, she would invite Satan into her life. Priscilla was still brainwashed by the cult and under the belief that she and her family were cursed. It was due to this fear that she rejoined the church in 2014. Upon rejoining the cult, Priscilla was forced to close her 2 businesses and move all of her clients to Shekinah's real estate company. 80% of Shekinah's clientele came from Priscilla's client list. Matthew Shin, one of Robert's family members, was Priscilla's boss at the realty company. Over half of Matthew's clients canceled on him, and most went around him to schedule showings with Priscilla. Allegedly, he physically assaulted her and berated her in the middle of showings to potential clients. During this time, Shirley and Robert wanted Priscilla to marry Luke, the janitor. Priscilla was disgusted by Luke, as he was known to have a porn addiction and was regularly ridiculed by other members of the church. Robert allegedly demanded that she have sex with him, to which Priscilla refused. She told Robert that she couldn't because she had a rash on her vagina. Allegedly, one day, Robert and Shirley arrived at Giga offices and forced her to undress. When they saw there was no rash, she was forced to have sex with Luke. Allegedly, Robert had promised Luke sex with Priscilla because he had a family connection to a prominent Korean entertainment company. In 2020, Robert allegedly began forcing Priscilla to have sex with him again. At this point, Shekinah was still largely out of the news, and Priscilla felt she couldn't go anywhere. However, the church was evolving, as Robert's son Isaiah had just created 7M Management and started recruiting several young TikTok dancers into the cult. So now we're at the point where the Netflix documentary, they really focused on the dancers and their families and the TikTok dance cult that Shekinah ends up making. And so there's definitely some things still in this part of the story that were not mentioned.
Yeah.
But, a lot of this will probably sound very familiar to you if you have watched the documentary. It's interesting to see how it evolves from where it started to where it is now. And you wonder how much of the things that he was allegedly doing before have carried over into what Shekinah is today.
Yeah.
And how much, I assume there's a lot of interaction between the church and those in his management company. Obviously, they're like in it,
it's
right?
It's like one and the same, yeah.
I don't know. There's still a lot we don't know.
That's what's crazy to think about, is how much we don't know. I mean, it's crazy to look at everything we do possibly know. I mean, a lot of it's allegedly not confirmed, but think about all the things we haven't yet heard that are probably even more fucked up than what we do know.
And I really wonder how much more these ex-members that did speak publicly through the documentary, and some of them have started doing interviews with other media outlets, how much they're not saying. And there's a reason why they're not saying a lot of things, as we'll get into, but it makes you wonder.
Yeah, it definitely does. So the documentary focuses on mainly, I would say, Miranda and Melanie's story. I mean, a few other people are in there too, but that's definitely the main focus. And Miranda and Melanie Wilking is their last name, grew up in Michigan with their loving parents, Kelly and Dean. Melanie said that they were, quote, surrounded by love and supported in everything. Their parents were both school teachers, and although they weren't wealthy, they made sure that they were able to support the two sisters in whatever they were passionate about. And Miranda always wanted to be a dancer, and Melanie, quote, wanted to be like Miranda. The two sisters grew up dancing together until Miranda moved to LA to pursue her dreams, and obviously that was really hard for Melanie, especially in that first year, but she called Miranda a couple of times every day. They stayed extremely close, and things always sounded super exciting. I mean, Miranda was out there making connections, dancing for a living, and Melanie ended up moving in with Miranda the following year, and they lived together. In auditions, they were told that they couldn't be together and had to work as solo acts, but the sisters really felt best when they danced together and wanted to make their name as a shared act. They started the TikTok account, The Wilking Sisters, which gained 3.3 million followers by 2019. Now, Sydney, you had seen them before, right?
Yeah, I saw the sister Melanie on TikTok. Like, I would watch her dance videos.
Like in the past or recently?
Recently, and yeah, like this past year, I'd say.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I don't often get a lot of dancing content on TikTok nowadays. I know that's kind of how TikTok started, right? Because it was Musical.ly first, or maybe Musical.ly, that was kind of like TikTok before. I think it may have actually been TikTok's original name. I'm not completely sure on that. Don't quote me. But I remember thinking TikTok was a dancing app. And that's how like Charlie D'Amelio and...
Well, it's still largely based around the sounds.
Yeah.
And the music. The videos are.
But it was the dances, the viral dances. Everyone would do the same dances. And I don't think you see much of that unless my algorithm just doesn't serve me dancing content, which I don't know why it wouldn't, because I do enjoy watching talented dancers. But yeah, this was a huge... It was like what TikTok was in the early days, the dancing accounts. So they started their account called The Wilking Sisters. That gained, like I said, 3.3 million followers by 2019. That's a lot.
Which, to be fair, in the early days on TikTok, it was a little bit easier to grow.
It's still easy. I mean? It's the easiest platform to gain a following on, for sure. So 3.3, I guess it's not the same as like,
I mean, what does
YouTube
Charlie D'Amelio have? Like 100 million
probably
followers
I don't
on
know.
TikTok?
You want to look that up? Is she still like... I don't hear much about them anymore, but I remember their dancing was everywhere.
What's her sister's name? Charlie and...
Dixie.
Yeah. That's right.
And it seems like people were more into watching the average person dance versus like classically trained dancers. But I don't know. Maybe I just wasn't ever seeing that. I just remember seeing more like...
I still see a lot of...
dancing. I know. I guess I do show you some dancing content.
I will say, you know, as someone, again, who has never really been on TikTok, I remember the first time I was at a party and saw a girl doing the say-so dance.
Oh, yeah. Didn't even know.
Yeah. I had never seen it before, so I was just like, oh, my God, you're so beautiful and so talented. Where did you figure that out?
Where'd you figure that out?
What's that from?
Dude, I've tried to learn some of the TikTok dances, and I thought, because I grew up as a dancer, that I'd be able to learn them. I did not retain any of my skills. It is so hard. I don't know how people learn. Remember Janelle taught herself one of them? She was good. She wouldn't post it, but...
Yeah, she was good. She had practiced, though, for hours.
It's hard stuff. It's hard stuff. But anyway, in April of 2019, they got a DM from famous krump dancer James Derrick, also known as B-Dash. Now, James wanted to collaborate with the sisters, and they made a joint video. He took an interest in Miranda, and the two of them started dating very soon after.
Yeah, and during the pandemic, he even came with the sisters to stay with their parents in Michigan during a lockdown. The family liked him a lot, and when they all returned to LA, her parents were happy that she not only had found success, but love in another city. When they returned, Miranda began hanging out with his friends, and they were all relatively famous, having appeared on World of Dance and had millions of followers, but still they were struggling. Kevin Davis, who goes by Concrete, was one of James's closest friends and a krump dancer. He and his girlfriend Kalia were living out of his car and trying to care for his son. However, James had become friends with a young videographer who had professional equipment, he had resources, and wanted to manage a young crew. He was also a pastor's son, which appealed to James and Kevin as they had grown up religious but hadn't found a welcoming Christian community since moving to LA. And this videographer's name was none other than Isaiah Shin. They began filming videos together, and the crew started having private Bible study sessions with Robert until 1 a.m. Though it allowed for independent expression, social media was hard for young dancers to manage. So Isaiah handled the business side for them, and they felt free to put out their dances and gain recognition. Isaiah and Robert then created 7M Management, and the crew immediately joined, and Miranda joined along with James. Melanie saw less and less of her sister once she joined 7M. Even though the two lived together, she was always with James, dancing or studying the Bible with Robert.
So in the fall of 2020, Miranda invites Melanie to a dinner at Robert's house. This was the big thing. They always did dinners over there. And even though the sisters were not raised in a religious household, they said that they were Catholic, but, Catholic but speaks for itself, right? But anyway, Melanie wanted to join to spend time with her sister and see what 7M was all about. So they go to this dinner, and Robert's sitting at the end of a long table, and everyone was very quiet. He asked Melanie if she ever considered herself a sinner. Interesting opening question when meeting someone. She said she didn't think so, but Robert responded saying, "You have sinned 1,000 times today, and if you died right now, you'd go to hell." And then everyone sat in a circle around Robert, normal behavior, and he went up to Melanie and placed his hands on her head and started speaking in tongues.
Go ahead. Let that Holy Ghost language come up out of you. Go ahead.
I don't know if I can mention this. We can cut this out if you want to. But some of our friends used to be in a thing.
Did some missionary work. And
they were heavily involved in something where they ended up being like pressured into speaking in tongues. And it was they're like deconstructed now, but it was interesting to hear them talk about how they were
it's a very real thing.
They just had to make it up. And they were like, everyone around us was doing it, so we just felt like we had to just pretend we were getting it from somewhere, and they were just speaking in tongues. Whatever came
Which, to be fair,
mind.
some people believe is legit.
And it's God speaking through you. That's the point of it.
Yeah, it's the Holy Spirit.
Gosh,
yep.
Crazy.
In the name of Jesus, you be made whole by the power of God.
What'd you call me?
Isn't it also like a tactic of these like specific like televangelists and evangelists?
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
Yes.
It's so frightening. I feel like, but I think it speaks to like his earlier question even of like, do you think you've sinned today? If you died today, you'd go to hell. Like, I think it's just those two frightening aspects to someone. Luckily with Melanie, she didn't have that like religious foundation.
Yeah.
So she could kind of just be like, what the fuck are you guys doing? But to someone with a religious foundation, that would be like terrifying. I feel like that would scare me at least into joining something like that.
Or would it like show like further prove the connection?
Right. Right. You're like,
and maybe it's not scary to them, but it's like impressive.
Right. It's like, holy shit, the Holy Spirit is talking through you. Like you
Holy shit, literally.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, especially if you're surrounded by people who all believe in it. There's something very powerful about that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I can see how that would be very, crazy to witness and, might impact you.
Imagine actually trying to speak in tongues and convince people it's coming from a
not only is it
source.
speaking in tongues, but like a lot of people speak in tongues and their whole bodies react.
Convulsing.
Which I follow some accounts on Instagram, and there's some really funny ones where people put like really, really rank music to it and stuff, and it's just
rank music.
like or like some heavy metal music to it, and they just it looks funny because it kind of looks like they're like moshing around.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It gets crazy.
That's how it
though.
looks.
Yeah.
Well,
it gets wild.
I mean, you definitely got to put on the creativity hat to do all that stuff.
Yeah, or just be really close to the Lord.
Or I guess if you believe, then that's what it really is, right?
This episode's brought to you by Acorns. Acorns makes it easy to start automatically saving and investing for your future. We all hear the term investing thrown around quite a bit, but many of us have no idea where to start with investing. I mean, it can definitely feel intimidating trying to just open up an account and figure out where to put your money. And a lot of people have the idea that investing requires a lot of money. And the great thing about Acorns is that they take all of the complicated terms out of investing. They make it extremely easy to understand, and they really make it sort of an autopilot method for getting into investing, because you don't need a lot of money or experience to invest with Acorns. In fact, you can get started with just your spare change. Acorns recommends an expert-built portfolio that fits you and your money goals, then it automatically invests your money for you. I started using Acorns when it first came out. Gosh, it was probably like couple years ago at least, and it was really nice to just be able to get my feet wet in investing and just make it super simple by investing that spare change on my transactions. And you can track everything through the Acorns app, which is absolutely easy to use, easy to understand. So head over to acorns.com/milehigher or download the Acorns app to start saving and investing for your future today. Client testimonial compensation provides incentive to positively promote Acorns. Investing involves risk. Acorns Advisors LLC and SEC registered investment advisor. View more disclosures at acorns.com/milehigher. Acorns makes it easy to invest while you spend, earn bonus investments while you shop your favorite brands, and more. Small actions today have the potential to have a massive impact on your future. From Acorns, mighty oaks do grow. So grow your oak.
So after that dinner, Melanie attended fewer and fewer Shekinah-related events. She was invited to a Wednesday service, but couldn't attend because she had promised to take a friend to the airport. And then Chloe Shin calls her and tells her that Robert really wants her at the service and asked if she could call an Uber for her friend and to get to Shekinah immediately. And Melanie decided at that point that she would never go back to the church. Wise decision. But meanwhile, 7M was picking up traction. It was the first entertainment business that Robert had started that was actually making money. And strangely enough, he was picking songs from the 50s and 60s for TikTok videos and even had the dancers dress in like old-timey apparel. Is there any videos of that we can pull up? I'd love to watch one on the episode. Because it's really strange. It's definitely not a TikTok trend to dress this way and to dance to these older songs. It kind of strange, but it was working. People were eating it up and the members were gaining millions of followers.
Beautiful.
And is that Miranda?
Mm-hmm.
It's like very highly produced.
Yeah. What kind of dancing is this?
I think this would be classified as jazz, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Chicago.
Oh, it's to Chicago? Okay, yeah. I did dances to Chicago songs in my youth.
The hat.
Yeah. Are their accounts still doing well, or are people just now revisiting them because of the documentary?
So it seems to be a combo. For one, we couldn't find her account just by searching it on the internet browser. I wonder if that's just an issue with looking it up outside of the app. But quite literally, you can only find fan accounts if you search her name into TikTok through Google Chrome or whatever. That's why it took us so long, because Sydney had to pull it up on the TikTok app. But I think, they still have a whole lot of subscribers, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she still has 2.1 million.
Wow.
So.
But it's how many of those people are active? Because I don't think people really monitor. With TikTok, you're mainly getting your content from your For You page. I feel like people very rarely use the friends or the people you're following.
That's true.
So I don't think people clear out their followings as much. They don't manage their subscriptions as much as you would on YouTube or something like that. But I'm curious how well their videos continued to do as time went on, because I don't think this overly this highly produced dancing content is as popular as the just raw people in their bathrooms or at random or public events just busting out. That's what people is something more relatable and raw versus this is pretty highly produced. I never see TikTok content like this anymore.
We were even talking about before, on YouTube, the trend is kind of switching away from highly extremely highly produced to just more conversational or chill. So,
people want real.
Yeah, and I don't know if Robert is capable of that.
No,
frankly,
because Robert is anything but real. So even though these dancers are no longer choreographing their dances or picking their music or their outfits or anything, it's all being done by someone else. Nothing really mattered once they saw their followers increase. I mean, the recipe was working.
In order to join 7M Management, you had to pay a 20% management fee, which is pretty typical for a management company. But not only that, a 10% tithe and 20% to the church. This was in addition to rent, as now the dancers lived in Shekinah properties. Still, Robert told the dancers that a real follower would give 100% of their income to the church, which is mind-blowing. I've never heard that from somebody who leads a church before. The dancers were booking commercials and Super Bowl halftime shows, and still they were given the same tiny allowance other Shekinah members were given. Kevin Davis was not only told to, quote-unquote, die to his son, as Kendall mentioned earlier, but he was only given $40 a week to support himself, Kalia, and his son. How does that even make sense?
Because it doesn't.
You can't support.
You don't.
It's like a day, if that.
Yeah.
Still, Miranda became increasingly distant from Melanie. The two shared a car, and Miranda would take it for days on end without returning Melanie's calls or texts. Their mom could view Miranda's bank account and saw that thousands of dollars were being moved with no clear recipient. Things with the Wilking family reached a turning point in 2021 when Melanie and Miranda's grandfather passed away. The two had booked tickets to fly back to Michigan and attend the funeral, and on the day of the flight, Miranda called her mom and told her that she had gotten COVID and couldn't make the flight. She flat out told Melanie she wasn't going, even though the two were supposed to sit together on that flight.
And Melanie even says in the documentary that she looked to her sister and was like, this isn't even about COVID, is it? And that she just starts sobbing.
Yeah, that's, I mean, to be in that sort of dilemma, couldn't even imagine. Like, do I follow what this group is telling me to do, or do I go back and be with my family at my grandfather's funeral?
Yeah. And they were very, very close, it sounds like.
Yeah. Which obviously completely shocked the family. Miranda was incredibly close to her grandfather while she was growing up. But Melanie ended up getting on that flight alone. Miranda stopped returning their calls and even blocked them. They tried reaching out to James as well, but he never responded. They feared for Miranda's life and called the police to perform a wellness check. And when the cops found Miranda in her Shekinah-owned home, she seemed perfectly fine. Chloe Shin was with her at this time, though.
They're definitely concerned. My understanding of this is that I guess you were supposed to go to Michigan today?
Yes. So my grandfather passed away not too long ago, and
I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you. And his funeral is this coming up week, and I just chose not to go home just out of my own grieving purposes, and they're not taking it very well at all, and they're
And in a last effort to get Miranda to come home to Michigan for the funeral, the Wilking family flew to Los Angeles and confronted Miranda at her home. They asked her who was keeping her from going, and she responded, quote, "Someone closer to God than you."
It's so sad, too, this part in the documentary. Her father just speaks about that was the moment where he knew she was gone.
So tough.
She was, I mean, that is a crazy thing to say. And
someone
I got
closer to God than you.
Someone closer to God than you. The documentary is really so sad, hearing from this family about how just heartbroken they are, obviously, about losing Miranda and just fearing for her safety. And her dad really got me. I mean, there are several times where he's just totally choked up, and it's just devastating to see. But after this, the family completely stopped hearing from Miranda. There were no calls, no text, and they even learned that James had proposed to her, and they found out just through Instagram. And this was so weird because they were so close, and to find something out so major about her life on the internet was obviously really painful for them. They reached out to the parents and families of other 7M members, all of whom were completely cut off from their children once they joined the cult as well. They would receive emails from Miranda every few months, but these were clearly written by someone else within 7M. And they later discovered that her mentor, Chloe Shin, was actually writing them, who was at the house the day that they tried to go and talk to her, the police. But Melanie even flew to LA to see Miranda perform in a 7M show. They actually did shows. And after not seeing her for months on end, she ran up to her sister. She talks about this in the documentary, thinking that it's going to be this big reunion. Like, she's going to be all happy to see her. She runs up to her. She hugs her. And Miranda completely went stiff. And it was, quote, like hugging a wall. So in February, after missing 2 of Miranda's birthdays, their family put out a video alive on Instagram alleging that 7M was a dangerous cult and that Miranda was trapped within. And we have a clip from it. There's a lot of it played in the documentary as well. But let's watch a little bit of that.
It's so real. It doesn't, yeah. We just want Miranda back and don't know what to do. I think that's why we're doing this, is we don't know what else to do. I think that's exactly what they want, is they want us to just go away.
It's not
To go away so they can just continue doing what
they don't know who they're messed. They don't know who we've been beforehand. They don't know how close we've been.
And it's
I know a person that came to our house. This person came to our house and sat in our house for over 7 weeks during the pandemic. And this is her husband now, and said, "You have a very different, weird family. You're way too close." And other people around us know the fact is we know that. People say that we are too close. We're weird that way, but we have a bond. We have a bond that we wish upon other people, that we can talk to each other no matter what. And somehow, some way, something changed our daughter. In no way in the world that a religious organization that we can't control has controlled her now.
So this Instagram Live got a lot of traction. People were like, what the fuck is going on here? And suddenly everyone, or a lot of people, knew about 7M and Shekinah. There were major media articles coming out. Internet sleuths started uncovering more abuse within the cult. James's friend, who was actually with him in a similar cult years earlier, reached out to him to say, quote, "How could you let this happen again?" And even though Robert enjoyed the fame he was getting, there's actually a part of him in the documentary, which I wish we could play some of the audio clips of him, but talking about like, oh, they're all, he actually brings up Miranda's family has made this Instagram Live and we're getting all this attention and there's articles, and he's like dropping the media sources that are covering it. And he goes, hallelujah. Like he's totally lit about it. Like he loves any type of fame, but he did want to quiet the cult accusations that were thrown at him, of course. He instructed members to have minimal contact with their families to ease tensions. Then they could conduct a, quote, sneak attack. Miranda and James flew to Michigan to visit her parents, and they were on Instagram Live the entire time. They told their fans that Miranda's parents wanted to control her and disapproved of her relationship with James because of his race. Totally twisted the actual reality of things. But she said that because her parents weren't religious, they were afraid of the church and didn't understand that it was actually a positive element in her life. And back at Shekinah, Robert completely locked things down. He had church members sign NDAs and stopped having private sessions with female members until the heat from the Wilking family and their accusations died down.
Then in May 2022, Daniel Joseph, Robert's pseudo-adopted son, and Chloe Shin, his actual daughter, left the church. The two had married in the years previous, and it's unclear why they left together. But Robert responded by saying, quote, "Who gives an F? Nobody's going to remember you." About his own kids. Oh, that just says so much about him.
I also I want to know more about their marriage, just because Daniel is described as Robert's basically his adopted son. And so it's through the cult that he marries his biologic daughter. It's just very strange to me. I mean, I hope they have a happy relationship. They left the cult and all that, but
yeah,
just still that relationship kind of tripped me up when I learned that they were married.
Yeah.
You wonder if there was some pressure there maybe for them to get together, or is just that's just happened organically. Right. I don't know.
No one knows.
But all this made some of the dancers not only wonder if they had been indoctrinated into a dangerous cult, but also made them question what the original members had been put through. In the spring of 2020, Robert allegedly started forcing Priscilla to have sex with him again. Though he had forced her to have sex with Luke, they hadn't had sex since she rejoined in 2014, allegedly. After this happened, he allegedly forced her to do it again every Tuesday for the next 2 years. Even before the pandemic started, Robert and Priscilla were working from home all day, 7 days a week. She left her house less than 20 times for the entirety of 2020. Robert also allegedly forced every member to apply for COVID relief funds and PPP loans. Then he allegedly forced them to give all the money they had received to the church, which enriched him to an untold degree. When the vaccine was released, Robert allegedly instructed every member to visit the same fake doctor. This person gave them falsified vaccination records and squirted water onto their arm with a syringe to make it look real. Again, in Robert's eyes, seeing a medical professional was a sin. In 2021, Priscilla injured her ankle and could barely move. Robert forbade her from seeing a doctor, and she couldn't walk on it for nearly a month. During this time, her Shekinah roommate was stalking her throughout the house while high on hard drugs and tried to allegedly make sexual advances on her. When Priscilla raised these concerns to Shirley, she simply laughed at her. In 2022, Robert remarried a woman named Hannah, who was even more controlling of Priscilla and was likely jealous of her alleged sexual relationship with Robert, even though it was completely non-consensual, that's just all fucked up just thinking about that. But Shirley remained a higher up in the church. After the Wilkins Instagram Live, Robert allegedly told Priscilla that he could no longer meet her every Tuesday for sex. The next day, Hannah forced her way into Priscilla's bedroom and tore down all the scriptures she had hung on the walls. She allegedly destroyed Priscilla's personal belongings and physically assaulted her. She kicked her for 30 minutes straight while shouting, quote, "You don't deserve God. You have no rights to be loved. Nobody likes you."
It's so upsetting.
Good God.
It's just horrible what Priscilla went through. My God.
Then allegedly, Hannah brought Robert into the room and continued beating and yelling at Priscilla for over an hour. For Priscilla, that was finally the last straw, and she left the church for good. After a few months alone, she finally reconnected with Melanie, who had married and given birth to a daughter since leaving Shekinah. At the same time, many of 7M's dancers also left. Not only did they learn about Robert's horrible treatment of the old members, but they finally came to see the financial, emotional, and personal control for what it was. A dangerous cult. I mean, there's just no other way to describe
I feel very
these alleged
comfortable
actions.
calling it a cult. I mean, I know there's been weirdly a lot of debate and defense against 7M.
Which after you hear these things, I don't know how you can defend it.
Maybe it's just the lack of knowledge, as we said in the beginning. But anyway, and though to our knowledge, even though Robert didn't sexually abuse the dancers as he did the other members, like we said, as far as we know, he did try on at least one occasion. There was one time that dancer Kylie Douglas complained about having back pain, and Robert offered to crack her back for her. He took her outside, and allegedly, while cracking her back, he also groped her body and thrusted his groin. Disgusting. And I guess while dancers planned on leaving regardless, this was just further confirmation for them. While Melanie and Priscilla learned that many dancers had left 7M, they contacted them and the Wilking family to compare their stories. Then on March 3rd, 2023, Priscilla, Melanie, and at least 25 other former members and dancers filed a lawsuit against Robert and Shekinah. In the 78-page lawsuit, they alleged 58 counts of wrongdoing, including fraud, human trafficking, forced labor, and sexual battery. Melanie Lee also included a 122-page letter of support that detailed her time at Shekinah and evidence of Robert's crimes through his television show and writings. And Robert even countersued the Lees and internet sleuth Katie Joy without a crystal ball in preparation for their lawsuit. Robert and Shekinah did not settle, and the lawsuit will go to trial in 2025. So we'll definitely have to keep an eye on that.
And that's really where it stands today. As far as, I'm sure a lot of people after watching are like, what's going on with it? And that's really where it is right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's no criminal investigation, as far as we know, going on or anything like that. These are all civil suits.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to make a note that the Wilking family is not officially included in the lawsuit. They connected with Priscilla and Melanie Lee as well, but they did not lend their support to the lawsuit. They discussed it in the documentary as kind of like they had just started making their relationship with Miranda. They just started having one again, and they didn't want to risk that.
Which makes sense. It's a weird balance.
It is. But I just wanted to bring that up because, I know there's two Melanies in the story.
Yeah,
so
get a little confusing.
Yeah. So the Melanie that wrote that's involved in the lawsuit is Melanie Lee, not Wilking.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the aftermath from all of this goes, Priscilla still suffers from PTSD and is in the process of rebuilding her life after leaving Shekinah. Still, she listens to Robert's recorded sermons. After reconnecting with Melanie, Priscilla eventually left Los Angeles and is trying to heal somewhere separate from her family, and the whereabouts of their other sister is still unknown. Many of the dancers who have left Shekinah have found great success. Kylie has her own dance crew, and Kevin Davis was even a featured dancer in Beyonce's Renaissance World Tour, which is a big deal.
Huge deal.
Others teach dance classes and have found more accepting religious communities. As we were just saying, Miranda and James are still with 7M, and the Wilking family was not involved in the lawsuit against Shekinah. They had finally gotten back in contact with Miranda again and feared losing her. She did attend Christmas with the family in 2023 and filmed everything. She even participated in Melanie's wedding and put out a joint dance video like they used to.
Yeah, it seems like, and she said this in the documentary too, that it's very like for the public, you know, that she'll kind of like stage these things. And almost every time they're together, it's filmed. But still, I guess to this day, as far as we know, the family still believes that when they're texting or emailing with Miranda, they're likely speaking to her mentor or someone else from Shekinah. The Netflix documentary was released on May 29th, and Shekinah has gone into complete protection mode. The 7M website is basically defunct. None of the other dancers have it even listed in their bios anymore. Even you had to use the Wayback Machine to like pull information from their website, right?
Yeah, I had to use the Wayback Machine to pull literally anything from Shekinah or 7M. Both of them, the websites still exist, but on 7M especially, there's literally nothing to click on. It just says 7M, we're real, you know?
Mm-hmm. And both Shekinah and 7M have issued statements denying that they are a cult. Of course, all cults don't think they are a cult. And they still maintain that they do not believe in the Seven Mountains mandate, which I just don't believe. I think they do. I think 7M has, I think it's something to do with that, but that's just me. Anyway, on June 5th, 2024, Miranda put out her own statement, so very recently, and this went out on her Instagram story. And she says, "Hey everyone, just wanted to hop on here and say that I have seen the documentary. I want to start out by saying that I appreciate the concern that has been expressed for my well-being. Due to pending litigation in which I am a plaintiff in a defamation lawsuit, it's not appropriate for me to comment on specific allegations, though I will state that I do not condone abuse in any way. I cannot speak for anyone else but myself. I love my mom, dad, and Melanie, and they will forever be part of my life. The truth is, we just don't see eye to eye at this time. I believe that this documentary is a one-sided story. I gave my life to Jesus Christ in 2020 and asked my family for some space in the very beginning to collect my thoughts and process my new walk I wanted to take with God. I also told my sister that I wanted to continue our Wilking Sisters social media page. She logged me out of our account, and when I asked her for access back, she denied my request. So I had no other choice but to start my own account and pursue my own career. I still have yet to receive access into our account. My family didn't honor the space I asked for, and I saw a different side of them that I've never seen before. Honestly, it made me mad, frustrated, and annoyed that they were being so overbearing and chaotic. In 2020, I went to Michigan to visit my family for Christmas. My papa was taken to the hospital due to medical issues. We got a phone call saying that he had short time before he would pass. Melanie and I drove to the hospital to say our last goodbyes. Before we went to the hospital to do so, I started a prayer for our papa in the car, and Melanie got offended and angry with me and told me to stop and to never pray around her. Our papa passed away that day. Fast forward about a month and a half, Melanie and I are in LA, and we're about to head back to Michigan for our papa's funeral. I was at a place with my family where I felt like I was being harassed. My parents and sister are not religious. They immediately called me going to church twice a week a cult. I felt that if I went back for the funeral, they would try to keep me there and not let me come back to LA. So I told my family that I would not be going to Michigan and that I wanted to move in and begin my life with James. To keep it simple, I did not want to be around them at that time because I felt threatened by them. I've been getting together with them over the past couple of years to make amends, move on, and work things out as a family. This documentary has created further challenge between us as I work to overcome this public attack. No one likes to be portrayed as their brainwashed, not in control of their life, shell of herself, human trafficked daughter, sister, when that just isn't the truth. I will add that I would have preferred that my family's circumstances remain private. I'm forced and feel like I have no other choice but to defend myself because of all this. I can't convince anyone to believe everything. I'm just a woman trying to live my life. I'm not a victim. I'm not in any harm. I'm not being abused. I've never asked my family or anyone to help me in any way. Respectfully, what I choose to do with my life is up to me. As I take time to process and reflect on this situation, I would appreciate your continued support. Thank you, Miranda Derrick. So obviously, people have had very mixed thoughts on that, because if you take all of that at face value, I can see how you would think, you know, her family is just controlling and judging. But like, that's again, I think people that don't understand the history behind Shekinah and Robert Shin and the danger that she's actually in. And it's been sad to see both sides getting so much hate, which is, it's the internet. That's how things go. But their family has gotten a ton of criticism, a ton of judgment. People think, there's something up with this family, and him saying that we're really close, and people have been very critical and hard on them, but also on Miranda too. And I really feel bad for her. At the end of the day, like, there are so many people that are like, she's so mean to her family, she's this, she's that. And like, we have to remember, people, she could be in a very dangerous situation. Obviously, she's portraying it one way, and maybe she's right. I hope everything's fine.
I think that's a possibility you have to consider, is that there is this past.
Yeah.
Is it possible that is no longer going on now?
Mm-hmm.
And
it's possible.
And she is able to, she does have free will and can do whatever she wants. She's just choosing to do that. Obviously,
I just find that incredibly hard to believe, especially with all the other members, how they are very clearly told that they cannot communicate with their family, or it has to be limited, or someone else has to communicate for you. We have evidence for that. Also the financial stuff. Clearly, I mean, her mom talked about the thousands of dollars being moved around in her bank account and going, like, they have no idea where it's going. So,
but if you believe that, I'm looking at, clearly this is a very spiritual thing for Miranda.
Yeah.
So it's not illegal to feel like God is telling me to give all my money to this church.
Of course it's not illegal. It's not illegal to be in a cult. It's your right as a citizen to do whatever the fuck you want with your life, obviously. But I understand the concern that parents have.
I understand the concern too.
And for all we know, she could be being sexually assaulted. I mean, it would not shock me, considering the past that people have gone through here.
True. And I would hope that her husband is at least, looking out for her and all that. But
it's very sad, but you're right. It is her right to do whatever she wants.
Because like
with her life.
to us on the outside, obviously it seems very extreme. We're very concerned based upon the person who's in charge of this company she signed with. And I think it's just natural for all of us, including her parents, to be like, that is not the best place for you to be. So we're worried about you.
Imagine if that was our child.
Yeah.
I would lose my mind. It was so painful to watch in the documentary when they're talking to law enforcement about, what do we do here? And they're like, there's nothing you can do. And the harder you push, the further you're going to push them away, or you're going to make things worse for them within the cult. That's when, things get more violent. I mean, there's really nothing they can do. But I think the only thing they told them they could do is try to keep communication open as much as you can. Just be there if they're ready. If shit hits the fan, that they'll be able to come to you. But it's just so sad. It is so sad. I really feel for all of these people. And Miranda also said that this was just recently, I think a couple of days ago before we're recording this, she said that she and James are receiving death threats since the documentary was released, which I think is
she
horrible.
posted a video to her Instagram.
Oh, do we have the clip? Yeah, let's watch that.
Transparent and a little vulnerable with you. But before this documentary, my husband and I, we felt safe. Now that this documentary is out, we feel like our lives have been put in danger. We have both been followed in our cars. We have received hate mail, death threats. People have been sending us messages to commit suicide. We've been stalked. Someone said that if I see you on the street, I'm going to come and gut you, so you better get security. Someone also said that if I see you walking on the sidewalk, I'm going to come and shove you in the trunk of my car. So these are just some of the messages that I've been receiving behind the scenes. And I honestly don't understand how my parents and my sister thought that this documentary would help me or would help our relationship in any way. I just don't understand that. And I have been getting together with my family for the past couple years privately to work on our relationship, to make things right, to mend what has been broken. And I've been loving it. I've been loving getting together, laughing, just enjoying each other's company. And this documentary has made it very difficult to continue doing that. And honestly, I think that my parents and my sister have focused so much on this documentary that they've forgotten about working on any relationship with me. And that hurts. That hurts me to say. And I'm going to be perfectly honest. It has been hard to post and do my content like nothing ever happened, because that's just not the case. So if things are a little slower and I'm not posting as much, just bear with me. I'm getting through this. I see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm going to get back to posting and dancing and doing what I just absolutely love. It just brings me so much joy. So I do want to get back to that. And I want to thank everyone who has been very supportive for the kind messages, DMs, emails. They don't go unnoticed. So thank you guys very much. And thank you for taking the time to listen. Love you guys. Bye.
Like I
really understand what she's saying.
I do too.
I have to empathize with her, and
I think we can understand.
I can
both
see how this would just open Pandora's box.
Yeah.
And I think this is the issue with some of these documentaries, is they tell half the story, and people don't take it further than that and do their own research and like take time to think critically, like, before I go and post this comment or send this message, how is this going to affect the situation?
Yeah.
And
I honestly felt at some points that the documentary sort of portrayed her as a villain in some, like, very subtly, and that could have just been the way I perceived it. But
because if it is a cult, then she is a victim of this cult.
Exactly. I see her personally as a victim. I don't think she sees herself like that. That's my opinion. I see the perspective from their family, and I see hers as well. I don't understand why people would send death threats to someone who is a victim if they really believe that she is. It makes no sense to me. The internet never makes sense to me. People are so fucking mean and evil. But I see what she's saying, how her parents may have, you know, kind of got lost in this whole documentary, and kind of brought focus away from their relationship with her, and that this could further damage it. I'm sure they thought about this could make things worse with her. But at the same time, I see their perspective of feeling like, what else do we do? This could be our only chance at getting her out of this, is to bring awareness to Robert Shin and what's actually going on here and some of the other victim stories.
But they should have went into more detail.
They should have
on Robert. They missed
agree.
Such an opportunity.
There's got to be a reason
to
I think they're
paint
afraid of him.
A clear picture of who the person is behind all of this. Because I think a lot of people just don't know.
Yeah.
And so they only have what they have access to. And I think that was a major mistake on the documentary's part. And probably that was in part because they were selling it to Netflix, and Netflix probably shot that down because they knew it'd be too much of an expose for them and too risky. Yeah. Because I even think we might have two stories here in a way. Like, there's two chapters to Robert Shin.
Yeah.
Is it possible that Shekinah at the beginning is continuing on today with these TikTok dancers and other members of the church? Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a big possibility. But the other possibility is we have to look at, what is Robert's motivation here? Like, what is he really after? Is it to be a cult leader? Is it to control people? Is it to manipulate people? Is it to exploit them for their resources to better himself?
Yes, and yes.
Or is it, is it now a different motivation? Is his motivation now to maybe do things the right way? You know what I mean? Like, is it possible for somebody like that to change, to evolve, to, I'm not by any means making excuses for anything that he's done, but I'm just thinking, like,
has he cleaned up the act a little bit?
Is he just a running a shitty business that's exploiting people and is just bad.
But a shitty business doesn't require you to not speak to your family and encourage you to cut them off.
Right. But that's him as a church leader. You know what I mean? And I think what makes this so difficult is that we have spirituality mixed with business, and two very, very personal things to somebody mixed together. And he's mixed them in that way for his own personal gain. But I think that's what makes this such a sticky situation, because he's tying the business, like tithe, offering, give the church 100%.
But that's clearly still going on with Miranda's bank account.
Right.
Like, it's not like he's just stopped
but
doing
is that
any of that.
But I mean, I just think there's a lot of information that we don't know as the public
about
and I don't want to be ignorant to that fact, because I think there's probably a lot that we just don't know, good or bad, that it's easy for us to make assumptions about based on the history and everything and be like, oh, this is still this horrible, disgusting cult. It absolutely could be. And all signs point to that. But is it possible that after he went through what he did with his original members, that he was like, if I continue to do that, this is all going to end? And he's now just become this kind of extreme Christian
I see what you mean.
management company
I think it's
that has some
possible.
extreme practices and unethical ways of doing things. But does it mean that it's an actual cult? Because it's like, then somebody out there might make the argument like, well, in some sense, every church is a cult, every religion's, you know what I mean? Like it could, like, you could kind of make the argument.
Well, I feel like if you're living in a church, in a house that's owned by them, most of your money is going to them. You're cutting off your family. To me, that crosses the line to cult when it becomes that controlling. It's like the level of control, in my opinion. And I don't think someone like Robert is capable of change. I think he's an egomaniac who is who he is, and it's when it comes to his motivations, like you were asking, I think it's all of the above: money, fame, power, control. And I think that is so deeply rooted in him that I doubt he's really changed that much. I think he has brainwashed these people. I think Miranda is in a cult, and I don't think she knows it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, Robert has had the opportunity to change. It was 2008 or 2009 when half the congregation left because they found out that he had been sexually assaulting those girls. And he, I mean, to them said, I'm going to change. But I mean, he just got worse. The only time that he actually literally stopped doing it, as far as we know, was when the Wilking family put out their live video. And so for me, I agree with you, Kendall. I don't think he's capable of that change. And on top of that, I think that Miranda, to me, it speaks so much to Scientology. Like, so much of this does go to Scientology, where like, you talk to Tom Cruise about Scientology, he's like, it's the greatest thing on earth.
Yeah.
Because he's one of their most treasured members, and they're never going to abuse him. He's got to be the one who's the speaking point, that he's their PR person. And in many ways, like, that's Miranda. Like,
totally. Yeah.
So to her, it probably is like, we don't know what, like, yes, she had a great childhood, it seems like, but we don't know what kind of personal spiritual issues she had and what holes she kind of filled in that way. So I don't know. I think to her, it is a different church. It is a different thing than the reality of it. And so I don't think in that video, at least, she's under the influence of anything but herself. Like, I think that was the most honest she could possibly be.
I agree. I truly think she doesn't feel like there's anything wrong with what she's in. I mean, it's crazy. I think maybe her parents thought that exposing all of this in the documentary, and maybe they thought more of it would come out. Maybe they didn't realize so much would be cut out, and they thought that this would maybe be the final thing to wake her up and she could see it all and realize who she is spending time with and the danger that she's in. And obviously a lot of it was left out, but I don't know how you could know all these things about this person and still want to have anything to do with them.
Yeah, and I just want to clear it up.
No, it's fine.
I just want to make sure people know that I am with you guys. I
know you're just playing devil's advocate for the actual devil.
Yeah, exactly.
No, we get you, Josh. It's good. It's good.
Just
discussion.
because I know there are some people that are thinking that way, and I'm just trying to, like, put all of the thoughts out
There's
there.
a lot of people
not
that
just
are
like
thinking that
looking
way.
at it one way, right?
Yeah.
Like just look at it. Let's be open-minded and just look at it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Ian hit the nail on the head when he made the comparison to Tom Cruise and Scientology. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing here. Is I think there's these people that are integral to 7M and their business and funding the church are going to have a far different experience than somebody who may not be
it's really
contributing as much resources to the church. Because why on earth would Robert want to, abuse her or do something to her that would instantly make her leave?
Right.
And that would be the end of 7M, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's what's going on here. I think it's very obvious. Robert has a lot of experience at this. He's been doing this for a long time, and he's probably evolved his methods and ways, and he knows I've got to be a little bit more careful because these people are going to leave and then come out, and eventually my crimes are going to catch up to me and I'm going to go down for these things. So I think he's maybe being a little bit more careful, and maybe, by scrubbing the internet of his sermons and all of that speaks volumes, because it just shows that he's got things to hide. He's trying to hide the evidence. He's trying to hide who he really is, because now he's under the microscope, and he knows that the more people know about him, the worse it looks for him, the worse it is for his business. So now he's playing defensive mode, and he's trying to deflect, and scrub any trace of evidence that would make it look like he's doing something wrong. And I think that speaks volume to who he is today, that he has not changed, and he's doing everything in his power to make sure that 7M continues on, Shekinah continues on, and prevents him from actually going down because of this. And again, I think there's just so much that we still don't know about what's really going on within.
That's why it's so hard to make a determination about it as it is today, because we don't, especially now, we don't know barely anything.
It'll be interesting to see where the lawsuit goes.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see this in the court of law and all the evidence examined, and see kind of how that unfolds, because I think that will provide a much bigger glimpse into the inner workings of 7M and of Shekinah Church. And for the love of God, I hope the IRS is listening and watched the documentary, because if anybody needs to be looked at from under a financial microscope, it seems like it's this guy, because I can't imagine that he's, that there's his bookkeeping is tip top.
No.
So, and especially with all the financial transactions. And I mean, when you're a tax exempt organization, like that shit's got to be really clean, really well kept. Otherwise you risk losing that. And I think if he loses that protection, I think everything will unravel after that.
I completely agree. I mean, that's exactly what happened with Rael. The moment he lost tax exempt status in France, he went to Canada. The moment he lost that status in Canada, he went to Japan. And I think that we'll probably end up seeing a similar thing with Robert. Like, as different countries hopefully crack down on him, he will just keep hopping and continuing to do what he does until he's behind bars.
It's people like him, they will never fucking stop.
No.
Forever he will be this person. And that's why I don't believe that he has changed anyway. And again, Josh, I totally understand your perspective. And I think and it wasn't your perspective. You're just bringing up the other side, because so many people, there's a huge narrative out there right now defending 7M. So I think it was an important thing to kind of explore.
Yeah, I think people need to hear the full story to really understand what's going on.
Yeah.
I don't think you can just watch that documentary and feel like you know exactly what's happening, or what's, why the parents are the way that they are. Because I would assume, I don't know for sure, I'd assume the parents know a lot and know the full story of Robert, and that's why they're reacting the way that they are. That's why they're so concerned.
Exactly. And people don't get that. Because they don't know. And it sucks. I feel so badly for them. I feel badly for all of the parents out there who have children that are in this, in my opinion, cult. And I feel horribly for the members of the cult and all of the ex-members. I mean, this is just a very, very sad situation all around. I think the good thing is that from history, most cults come to an end. Yeah.
And so I think there will be something.
It's the beginning of the end for
yeah,
7M.
Yeah, I think it is not going to be around forever, and I think things are going to come to light that are going to hopefully set the record straight and also provide justice, especially for those members who went through what they did. I mean, my God, I just can't imagine what that must have been like. And for their sake, I hope that somebody's held responsible, because nobody should have to go through that. And I think anybody that exploits one's spirituality for their own personal gain is the devil. And
also exploiting artists because they know that they're desperate and like, it's hard to make it in that world. And a lot of them are financially struggling, and he really preyed upon that. And it's fucking horrible. But please, I know our audience will, you guys are amazing, but please don't send any hate and death threats to anyone involved with this. I don't know why. It's so sad to me that that's where people go.
That doesn't help.
That's
help
where the
anything.
world's at.
Doesn't help anything.
No, of course not. But yeah, guys, that's going to be it for us today. We want to hear your thoughts. For sure.
Let us know what you think.
Yeah, let us know in the comments below. We'll be back next week, but until then, keep on taking your mind a mile higher.